I am delighted to talk with you today, Yael. For those of you who do not know, Yael Shy is an amazing author. Here's her book, What Now? Such a gorgeous book. I really love it. It's so clear. It's so authentic. And you are an amazing mindfulness expert who teaches meditation. You lead people in programs. And I will provide information for people to be able to find you. But what I think we're talking about today, desire. This is a topic you propose. Where are we going with it?
Yeah, I'm fascinated by desire, and I'm particularly kind of interested in it because I think spiritual people uh,
Mhm.
get it wrong a lot, or at least I've been taught from the Buddhist world that I live in, and then like kind of more environmentally, perhaps from like Christian and Jewish
Mhm.
influences that like this desire thing only leads to problems. It's
Right,
only bad.
right.
And I get it because I do think there's some suffering that arises when we like work with or when we experience desire in a particular way, when we react to desire in a particular way. So I think it comes with a whole bunch of problems, which we can get into.
Yeah.
But I also think there's so much like beauty and power and
Mm.
transformative properties that are a part of longing and desire. And so that's what I'm into.
Oh, I love it. Just to be clear, I think it's important to just make sure that I'm on the same page. When we talk desire,
Yes.
we're not talking exclusively like sexual desire, although that could be in the mix. We're
Yes.
talking desire as this sort of wanting, needing. So, like when you say the word desire, like right away, of course, I think Buddhism, and then I also think Freud.
Yeah, I love how you framed that because I think sometimes when I talk to people about this, they're like, but you don't mean the like base level sexual stuff. Like you mean like deeper longing. But I actually think it's inclusive. Like
Good.
it's not just the sexual stuff, but it doesn't mean that we have to say like that's bad. I think it's all related.
I think so too, and I'm glad that you include it because I think we tend to go wrong with that as well. Is that there's a lot of stuff, baggage, problems that come with
Yes.
it.
Yes.
We don't need to denigrate the thing that like sort of brings us into this world. When you say yes, desire, we sort of tend to get it wrong. There is this background in Buddhism. You think about the Four Noble Truths and how getting rid of desire is the way to get rid of suffering. Or
Yes.
from a psychoanalytic point of view, desire is a part of the id and this sort of shadowy side of ourselves. So I'm curious where you go with all of that, and in particular, I'm assuming with the Four Noble Truths, you've got a take on that.
Where we normally live, the non like Buddhist monks of
Mhm.
us, is in a place, I think, of a lot of suffering around desire. Why? We're running around trying to meet everything we want, get everything we want. If we don't get it, we're upset. Then
Yes,
when we get it, oh my gosh, we got it for like 2 seconds, we're happy. And then a new desire kind of pops up. And it's bottomless.
right. And those desires can be like really like tiny. I want this thing at the restaurant, or I want to get through the line, or I want to get on the next subway. It's like all the little things are like, I want. Oh, wait, I didn't get that. And now I'm
Yes.
frustrated, right?
Totally. And I mean, billions and billions of dollars are spent churning us into more and more desires
Yeah.
of all kinds of like, I want that watch, I want that clothes, I want that person, I want to have sex with that person, I want
Right.
like to see that movie. And so it's just never ending. And so I think the Buddhists and lots of spiritual people were on to something, being like, this can't be it. Like, this can't be like where happiness lies. It's bottomless, it's endless, it's ever generating, and it doesn't seem to satisfy. Like, I think it's C.S. Lewis who is like, what's the desire underneath the
Yeah,
desire?
exactly.
So there's like top levels. Then there's like this underneath thing that we really want that all the top stuff is
Right.
not satisfying, not
Right.
touching.
Right. I want the watch. I want the car. I want these things because they're going to make me feel like I'm important or I've made it or what there's the underlying desires. And those desires, and this is where I think Buddhism and Freud is like that is never ending. Like
Yeah.
you get the watch and for 2 seconds and then you're like, oh man, now I need something else. Desire's structure is to not be fulfilled. It's to sort of
Exactly.
create itself again.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Like I read a lot of Buddhist books, and sometimes they're
Hmm.
like the orthodox kind of like monk written Buddhist books. And they're like, at least the ones I'm reading, I don't think this is everyone, but they're like, what we must do is burn up, like get rid of from the root, like unroot yourself from sensory desire. So some of them are
Hmm.
like okay with spiritual desire.
Right.
They don't want you anywhere near sensory desires, desires of the flesh, like the kind like sexual, but also
Right.
like, I want whatever, all those other desires of comfort,
Hmm.
touch. So the key to happiness, to real deep contentment, is to like at the root kind of keep turning that off,
Right.
getting rid of it, like truly getting rid of it, which to me, I just like been in too much therapy to be like, that can't be it either. Like that feels to me like repression. I don't
Mm.
know that there is maybe at a certain level that I'm just not at, but I don't know if I want to be at. It feels like this transcending or repressing of the desire is not even necessary, because I think the Buddha, like in the awakening story of the Buddha, he kind of cautions against that because that's what the ascetics were doing. That's not the path.
Right. And you describe it as sort of like transcendence or repression. And to me, it sounds like an emptying.
Yes.
Take the kind of person you have like a million desires and you're like rushing in the morning and you don't get this and you don't get that and you're kind of annoyed and you want this person to get out of your way and they don't move out of your way and so you're upset about that and you get to the Starbucks and they're like, oh, we're sorry, we're out of oat milk, and you're like, oh, like that constant little thing, as opposed to the person that kind of goes, these things don't matter.
Right.
Like I show up and it's like what's there I'm fine with, right? That description of that person, that vision of a self makes sense. The person who's not at the mercy of those base desires. And that the moment that they don't get it, that it's like, I didn't get it, right? I
Totally.
didn't get what I, and then, yeah, but you're left with, well, where is enjoyment? Where's joy? There's something really beautiful about joy. It's not like the world's suddenly this empty gray thing. And I feel like that's what you're getting at.
Yes, exactly. And to add one more thing into this, I think there's a difference between grasping, craving at the objects of desire
Hmm.
versus the actual feeling itself, which is
Hmm.
actually kind of fun. Like
Hmm.
in the body, if you drop into just like the sensations of desire, it's
Hmm.
like there's like, to me, it feels often energizing. It
Hmm.
feels kind of like delightful, like there's like a fiery energy in it.
Hmm.
And I think like people like romance movies or books like because of that long stretch in that space before they like actually consummate or get
Right.
together,
Right.
because you're like like something is lit, something is alive in
Hmm.
that
Right.
space before,
Yeah.
you know
Hmm.
I mean, we also want satisfaction,
Yeah.
fine, but there's something very special that happens in the meantime.
That space of anticipation before the desires satisfied. And I think that satisfaction is a really good word there. Like that's not satisfied.
Yes,
Has a certain pleasure, joy, delight to it when you
yes,
can really feel it. Like there's something really human
yes.
about it. Like I would not want to watch a movie and be like, I feel nothing. Which
Right.
I think is what the Buddhists are getting at, but there's a way in which it translates sometimes to that.
Exactly. That's a good way to say it, right? That it's just kind of like a graying of the field. I want to read you if I can find it quickly. So this is a beautiful book, actually. It's
Hmm.
Satipatthana Meditation by this guy Bhikkhu
Unlike.
Analayo.
Oh, fabulous.
And it's one of these kind of books. And what he says about desire as like one of the hindrances is like this kind of a thing that makes me so sad. I just wrote ugh next to it because he's like the purpose of food is to nourish the body, not to stimulate taste buds. So it's
Mm.
like try not to like get into, he like recommends just mixing all the food together so you don't taste the pleasure. It's like so sad. Like we have one life.
Right,
And we're really, I guess as to what your point is, like so much of it is spent on the far reaches of the other side, trying
right.
to satisfy every desire.
Yeah.
It's so sad to me to be like,
Mm.
don't
Well,
enjoy.
well, and for me, the fundamental thing is can you enjoy this? And
Yes.
when the pleasure's over, not like fall prey to, well, I need to be back to that state, like the
Yes.
grasping at that state, as opposed to like, I'm experiencing something delicious right now. My taste buds are capable of like experiencing all of this olfactory experience of like what a delightful experience. And then the experience is over. And
Yes.
maybe the next meal isn't that. And then you're not like, oh, but it just wasn't as good as that previous meal. So this meal sucked. To me, it's always been about the way in which we remain attached to a certain state in desire. And when we don't get it, that it's dissatisfaction as opposed to that's our experience.
Yes.
And that's okay too. And so for all of these, it's like, this is my experience. Like I'm not now craving what I had before. Now I'm going to go in search of it again.
Right. Right. And I keep seeing like maybe I'm just not enlightened enough. I don't know. But I think like couldn't you just be present if the craving does arise? Like
Yeah.
couldn't you just hold that and watch that and be with that as it's
Hmm.
just like whoop whoop, and
Yeah.
maybe at some point they would say the cravings just stop. Like when
Right.
you really fully in it,
Yeah.
then they stop on their own.
Maybe. I don't know because I've never spent my life sort of mixing all of my food in like a blender and then just drinking it, thinking, I can't be attached to texture. But to me, again, it feels like a certain kind of graying or flattening of the possibilities of experience.
Right.
You take this out, and sure, there's no suffering because there's no satisfaction, but there's also no joy.
Yeah.
I'm curious what you think about when it comes to the
Yes.
desires for success or the desires to create something, the aspirations, dreams, things like that that are sort of like where desire fits in and can often be a huge source of motivation.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on those sorts of desires?
Yeah. So this is why I think it's all related because same in certain ways.
Hmm.
Like, what if we could really open up to the feel those desires, whatever they
Hmm.
are, and keep going closer and keep going closer to them. So for instance, like I really want um to be loved or something. Like I
Right.
really want a partner. I really want so but let's say that's your biggest desire, but it's very scary. It's very vulnerable. And most of the time, I think what people walk around with when it's these big desires, they
Hmm.
actually walk around with its flip, which is anxiety. What if I never do it? What if I never do it? Or like, I'm never going to do it. I'm never going to do it just to try and like manage that like extreme vulnerability because you're
Yeah,
not obviously like not in control of it.
that's right.
Then let's say you get close to it, you feel it, you notice like, oh my gosh, what would you ask this question. I ask myself this question all the time about like these big desires, like what would it feel like if I had it? Because you
Mm,
want something, so you must have an idea in your mind or a connection that it would you can summon up some kind of feeling in the body.
Yeah.
So it was like if I was loved, like I would feel like full inside. I would feel
Mm.
like totally like I would sit straighter. I would walk through the world with more purpose, you know? And I think it's similar almost, like success. What would success if I like had a ton of money, like, okay, what would that feel like? I guess I could finally relax. Like I wouldn't be so stressed all the time.
Mhm.
Once you kind of feel into that, for me anyway, it's like it's almost like I don't really need the thing anymore. Like I've gotten
Mhm.
some of the thing I was after
Mhm.
just by tapping into the feeling.
Mhm. A feeling that you can generate for yourself or is already there in some degree, right? That like this thing that you externally feel needs to supply it. You're actually able to find it and experience
Yeah,
it in some way, whether it's imagining yourself in that or whatever, but the capacity to experience that which you are seeking.
yes.
Yeah.
And obviously, just this feeling and doing this kind of meditation, it doesn't substitute for like a real partner. Like there are good reasons to want those things or like
Yeah.
money and things like that,
Right, exactly.
but it hits at some piece of the desire.
So to go back to the satisfaction question, so you go through this crate and then you get the partner,
Yeah,
you get the job, or you
yeah,
get the success, you
yeah,
got the money, and then usually what happens with desire? Well,
yeah,
now I want more, or
yeah,
they're not the one. Still, some part of me feels unloved, or whatever.
yes,
And so we're back in that sort of sense of desire never being fulfilled. And to me,
yes.
that's part of what has to be worked on is, and why it's not about getting the object that you think is going to sort of get rid of the desire, but getting
Yeah.
to that underlying, what is this really motivating about?
I think it's such a good point. And it definitely happened with me. I mean, for years, all I wanted was like a partner or like a romantic partner. And then, like, the worst part of our relationship was after we started getting with the guy I ended up marrying. After we started getting serious, I was like, why do I still feel lonely? Like, I thought this was
Mm,
supposed to cure that. And
right.
it was like, I got so angry at him. I was like, he's doing
Mm,
something wrong because that was
right.
supposed to cure this. And then I was like, is something wrong with me? Is it him? Like, what is happening here? And it's that
Yeah.
I think there's a certain part of desire that like only we can meet. Meet in both ways, like meet
Mhm.
in like bear witness to and hold and feel,
Right.
and also satisfy in some
Yeah.
ways. And like the way that it gets satisfied is, I think, just through like attention and love of those
Mhm.
like core wants and
Yeah,
feelings of emptiness and yeah,
exactly. So what I hear you saying is recognizing that we can go in pursuit of all these things and
yeah,
experience these things and not having them, that will not solve
right.
the deep core lack, emptiness, longing that's there. The solution isn't to be, I'm going to negate all desire and never have any relationships and no partners.
Which I've tried.
Which
It's not a
yeah,
good.
that's like the equivalent of sort of like, food is only for nourishment. People are only supposed to like, handle like ministerial needs in your life. It's
Right,
like,
right.
no, no, you're really missing out on a lot. But
Yes,
they're not necessarily going to solve those core feelings. And so you don't have to negate them. It's
right.
like I can experience them. And in a way, there's something quite beautiful about being like, you know what? I can be in relationship, I can be married,
Yes,
and you're not going to solve everything for me. I have to still do this work. And when you're there, then there's like a permission because then it's not doing the things that we often do, which you very succinctly described as like blaming the other person, like they're doing something wrong. I'm feeling some way, which is what so much strife is about in relationships.
totally. So then you have the chance, once you're addressing that, the lack, that inner
Mhm.
pain or story or feeling of emptiness, when that's like being addressed with love and with like feeling going close to it and dealing with it, you come into such a better relationship with people,
Mm-hmm.
with food, with sensory objects. Like
Yeah,
it's like everything comes alive in a
right,
different kind of a way.
right. Because you really are just experiencing them and present to them.
The image I love from the Buddhist world is the hungry ghost
Mm,
of like that distended belly and tiny throat, and that nothing can get in when that's the case, when there's the attention you're trying to get from the outside, put it in the inside, and the only way to go is from the inside.
right, that's right. So where does that then leave us with dreams? When you have an aspiration, writing a book, building a business, creating something in the world,
Yeah,
creation and desire. We need that. You've written a book.
yeah,
You know what a labor that is.
yeah.
There, there has to be like an energy and motivation bit of like, nobody forced you to write a book, right? Nobody forced you to create your business. It came out of something. So how does desire fit into that? Like
Yeah,
bringing stuff into the world.
yeah, and that's part of what I love about it is that it has this energizing quality. I think Audre Lorde wrote about this a lot, like the erotic as power in a kind of
Hmm.
like fluid way, that you're tapping into when you tap into it. And I think Esther Perel also says like um, that the erotic, which is another way of talking about desire,
Yeah.
like that is an antidote to death. It's
Mm.
truly is like your life force. And my therapist is
Right.
always like, where's your libido for that? Like not even talking
Yeah.
about sexual stuff, just like
Yeah, it is.
life.
That energy is really amazing. And it kind of has an erotic dimension.
Mm,
Really, as you're saying, it often feels like it's something that wants to sort of give birth to itself. My best writing just wants to come out when I give over to it. It just feels like it's something else moving through you.
yes.
And I feel like that's the thing about creation, about building and things like that. When it's not tied with, if I do this, people will respect me finally. If I do this, I will prove to my father or my mother, those core emptinesses that often can drive things.
Yes. And I can tell the difference. Like there have been times where I've felt both. And
Oh, yeah,
every time I go in the direction of what would be called ego or like, this is about me, then it always feels contracted.
you and I both have legal backgrounds. I went into law, and I know that there is definitely a portion of my academic and legal life that was all about being smart to prove to my dad that I loved him. It always had a kind of ickiness to it. It just didn't feel authentic.
So I guess it's kind of like an inner discernment sometimes of like, is this or is this? Like, where
Right.
is this coming from? And it's not that the desire to prove to your dad or like the desire to be like, to be somebody, like, it's not that those are bad, but that's
Right.
one of those moments where I guess it's back to like, okay, what do I need to tend to? It's
Yes,
not
exactly.
gonna be met from out there.
Right. For some of us, some of those deep core, we call them wounds or desires, that longing, can be sort of the initial impetus. Sort of you are trying to solve that. It's the
Yes.
recognition that like, that third, fourth, fifth book, that next million, whatever, that's actually not going to solve it. So if you can still tap into and create something from that other place and then be aware of like, oh, it still might be hitched in some way. If I can
Yes.
unhook it, there's something still very powerful about, still doing it and
Yes.
using it as an opportunity to kind of still see, what part of me, what kind of desires are kind of, I think of them as almost like, um, you know, baggage that's hooked itself to the creative enterprise. You know?
Yeah, that's a really beautiful framing. Yeah, because it's not like even those parts of ourselves that are like, I did that like really because I wanted attention. It's like,
Yeah,
oh, what a sweet part of myself,
right.
you know? that same part that wants attention might also have gotten me in front of people that I needed to be in front of, like
Exactly.
all of those things.
Exactly.
It's very loving.
Exactly. It's very loving at the end. To conclude, what put you on this path of thinking about this topic?
Yeah. I think I've always been fascinated, mainly because I've always felt assaulted by how much
Mm.
desire I had from a child. Like, I was like, my parents were always like, I come from a big family, and they were like, you're never happy with what you have. Why can't you be happy with what you have? Because, like, they were overwhelmed with their children's needs.
Right.
And so I asked myself that question, like, oh, why can't I ever be happy with what I have? And I felt when I was younger, that it really was my desire that was the source of my suffering. That's what led me to Buddhism, because I was
Hmm.
like, oh, that sounds right. Yeah, desire is suffering. All these things I want, I just want to stop wanting them because I can't
Yeah.
have them.
Hmm.
And then I think over time, I'm just become like really fascinated by, okay, what if your desire could actually be this beautiful, powerful part of yourself? You just have to learn how to work with it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I think that's really important. Because of the way that understanding of desire has been received, and not just in Buddhism, but in lots of spiritual circles, there's the sense that eradication. So I think you're working on a beautiful project. Is this going to be a book, an article, series of? Okay, fabulous. So you're writing a book.
Yep,
Well,
I'm writing a book
well,
slowly.
isn't it amazing how this question that came out of your childhood experience, this is sort of like this part of you that was like, why am I never satisfied, has actually come around to give you a much richer, incredibly beautiful way of relating to that very desire.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, I think that's really right. I think I am really grateful. And I think it is like ultimately often about writing a book. I don't know if you had this experience, but it's kind of like, for me, it feels very much like the things I'm kind of in the middle of and kind of have figured some things out, then it feels like ready to be shared. And
Yeah.
what do you all think? And that's sort of what it is.
Well, I think this is an amazing project, and I loved what you had to share on desire. So thank you
Thank you for
for
having me.
sharing. Yeah, my pleasure. All right. Well, it was wonderful talking with you. And I will tell everybody where to find Yael. You're at www.yaelshy.com, right?
Yep,
Are
yep.
you also, do you also have another website?
It all goes back to there. So
Okay.
that's where my business mindfulness consulting is, and where all my workshops and programs can be found.
Okay, fabulous. Well, highly recommend everybody explore what you have to offer.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Yael.